Is it this volume or is
Can
it
you
like
hear? Can people hear?
this volume or
Can you hear? Can people
okay.
hear?
This volume or
Can you hear? Can people hear? 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 Can you hear?
What is that?
something is going on?
What was that? We can hear. I can hear now. Yes. Okay, they can hear now. Go ahead. That was weird.
Okay. Something has invaded our computers and hopefully you can hear us now. Can everyone hear? Okay. So I'm gonna start over. That was very interesting. So this is the impressive interview, and thank you all for attending, and thank you, Sharon, for hosting me today. That's me. I'm Deborah Sheffield. I'm a senior career counselor and academic advisor at the Career Development and Gloria S. Williams Advising Center at William Patterson University. Welcome back virtually to all the alumni who are here today. What to expect from my presentation? I'm going to go over quite a few things regarding interviews, and I might move somewhat quickly through it, but again, it sounds like the presentation will be online available and also through the YouTube channel. So if you miss anything, please feel free to view it once again. What to expect is I'm going to discuss with you tips for before and after the interview, how to prepare for various types of interviews, real questions and how to answer them, dressing for success, an interview demonstration that Sharon will help me with, and my top 10 do's and don'ts of interviewing. So let's begin with and then Q&A, of course, at the end. So let's talk about before the interview. First, preparation is key. You need to unlock your potential beforehand. I hope you like my key analogy there. Okay, so some things that you should do ahead of time. If you walk away with one important fact about interviewing that will set you apart from everyone else, I want you to do this. I want you to research, research, and research. Know the company and the job that you are interviewing for before you get there. Nothing turns an interviewer off more than not knowing where you are or what you're interviewing for. Ways to do that are the website, start there, but also know that most companies are online in terms of with social networking as well. They might have LinkedIn pages, Facebook pages, Twitter. You might, if they're public, you might see stock information. You should definitely study the position itself and understand comparable salaries through websites such as salary.com. There's lots of ways to do research and be prepared for your interview. Definitely role play the interview with a friend, spouse, or a career counselor here at the Career Development and Advisement Center. We do welcome alumni for appointments in our office, and you can do mock interviews right here with us or perhaps with me. Make sure that you study yourself. I know that sounds a little bit strange, but you have a resume that you put together, and it might have been a long time ago. You might have forgotten some of the things that are on your resume. And if you know that there's certain questions to expect, you might want to sit back and journal and think about some situations that you've been in that you could provide as examples in your interview. So remember yourself, because you don't want to be there at your house later thinking, oh, I should have said that, I forgot to give that example. So think about examples ahead of time, maybe even journal them. When you go to the interview, make sure you have several copies of your resume printed on resume paper. For newer alumni, you might not be aware that there is something called resume paper that you can get in any kind of a store like a Staples or an Office Depot. Make sure you also bring a copy of the job posting itself. Make sure that you type up and print a reference sheet beforehand, and you should definitely contact your references to let them know that they might be contacted. And the reference sheet should include their name, your relationship to them, their email address, and their phone number at the very least. Write out a list of questions, because at the end of an interview, almost always an employer will say, do you have any questions for us? Your answer should never be no, and it should never be questions like, what is my salary going to be and my time off? You should have questions that show that you're interested in being a team player and to help them in their positions. So you want to ask questions about the job itself and the company itself, such as, what do you like most about working for this company? And what's a day like in this company, in this position? And where's the future headed for this company? Make sure that you map out your route ahead of time, definitely taking into account traffic, road closures, public transportation delays. If any of you have been in Wayne lately, I could tell you that yesterday, For example, it took me 35 minutes to get from William Patterson to Valley Road. I'm sure you all miss those days because of construction. So make sure that you know that there could be traffic. This might be a route that you've never taken before, and the time of day. If you don't have traditional hours like a 9 to 5 right now, understand that the traffic at 8:30 a.m. is a whole lot different than the traffic at 2:30 p.m. One tip is to have a last-minute stock of hygiene items, including tissues, hand wipes, gums or mints, and deodorant. Anything that you think you might need ahead of time. You have a cold, a hand wipe is helpful if you go through a subway, for example. You could have gum or mints. Make sure you do throw away that gum before the interview, of course. Make sure that you don't neglect any part of the outfit that you're going to wear for the interview. So that includes everything from head to toe. Make sure your shoes are polished, your suit is dry cleaned, and hosiery for the women. If you're going to wear hosiery, we all know that holes happen all the time, snags and holes. Make sure you tuck another set of hosiery in your purse. Get everything ready, lay it all out the night before, so you're not worried about it that day. So let's go on to talking about types of interviews. So you probably have experienced some interviews at this point, but maybe not all types. So interviews vary, but they all have the same goal, getting a job at the end. One is a job fair, and a job fair should be treated the same way as any interview that you would go to in an office. Still, all rules apply. You should be researching ahead of time. You should be wearing a professional outfit like you see here. This was at one of our job fairs. So you make sure that your job fair interview style is the same way as you would, just as formal as you would if you went to a company. There's phone interviews. Of course, those are missing nonverbal communication, as my webinar is today, which is always tricky. However, in a phone interview, make sure that your personality comes through in your voice itself. And make sure that I've had a phone interview where I actually wore an interview suit during it because it just made me feel more formal, and therefore I acted more formal. There's group interviews. Always important to make sure you're neither dominating the group too much or sitting back and let other people dominating. That's a true test in how you work in a team. There's also formal interviews that all of the above are, and sometimes there's informal interviews, but it's dangerous to get to a position where you think the interview is too informal and you try to talk to the person like a friend. Understand that no matter how informal an interview may seem, this is someone that could potentially hire you, and so don't treat them like a friend. Treat them like someone that might be your supervisor. So now we're going to go on to talking about specific questions and how to answer them, and that will be this section. But I do want you to understand that the answers to your questions are a very small part of the employer's decision to hire you. The majority of an employer's decision to hire you is actually going to be your nonverbal communication. So try not to obsess too much over the answers to your questions and worry more about how you present yourself nonverbally. So here's some questions. Every interview I've ever been on has always started with the question, tell us about yourself. And it seems very broad, but here are some tips to answering that question. This might be your longest answer, but try to keep your answer to no more than about 2 minutes in length. And make sure that all the information you're giving is pertinent to the position. Use buzzwords from the job description. So if you saw the job description called for someone who is organized and a team player, make sure that you're giving examples of yourself in either your work experience or perhaps in a group project or something from school in which you did display teamwork and organization. Make sure you highlight your accomplishments from your resume. The tell us about yourself question is going to sound a lot like your cover letter and a lot like if you were to take a highlighter and highlight important parts of your resume while also adding your personal traits to it. Make sure you talk about work, education, skills, and other relevant experience. Nothing personal that has nothing to do with the job. So again, don't mention personal information such as family, religion, politics, etc. Unless, of course, this is a political position you're applying to. Another question that you'll hear often are, what are your strengths? And also, on the other end of the coin, what areas do you need to improve on? So what are your strengths tends to be easier. Keep them related to the job. But the biggest thing I can tell you with strengths is to use examples. It's sort of weak to say I'm a people person or I'm a good team player. try to give an example of when someone has either complimented you for doing those things, or in which you could display that you did do those things. So then there's what areas do you need to improve on, and this question tends to make a lot of people nervous. So how do you answer it? You keep it short and simple. Areas of improvement you talk about. Don't use any deal breaker weaknesses. If you're the type of person that has anger fits and has anger management issues, that's a big red flag for employers. You might want to tuck that in the back pocket and talk to someone else about that. In terms of an employment weakness, don't talk about anything that couldn't be fixed or that would send someone running, for example. Always bring up your weakness and then emphasize how you plan on improving on this weakness. So always end on a high note.
Question?
Yes.
Can you give an example of an answer to that question?
Sure. So if your weakness is truly that you have a hard time delegating responsibilities to people because maybe you like to kind of control all your own work, you could say that I like to make sure everything's perfect, and sometimes I like to do everything myself, and I have a hard time delegating tasks. But I'm working on improving that by realizing that everyone can bring their own valuable perspective and input to the project.
Okay.
So
Great.
what do you know about our company and this position? So this is where I said earlier, if you walk away with nothing else, at least walk away with knowing that you should be doing research. This question, believe it or not, might be the most important in the interview. You must, and I put that in all caps, do your research ahead of time. If you don't know about the position, that's the end of the interview. It's a big red flag that could definitely cost you the job. Make sure you've done some research about it, including the looking at their website with the About Us page on most companies' websites. Their mission statement would be a really good place to start, and the different current projects that they're working on. Definitely bring up any awards the company might have won. Moving on, tell us about your previous work experience. This might seem like an easier question, but the key is to make sure that you highlight points that are relevant to the job you're interviewing for. So again, highlight the experiences that are related to your job. If you don't have relevant experience, try to think in terms of transferable skills. So if you're interviewing for a job that's a managerial job that might require customer service skills, and all you have done was waited tables, well, you do have customer service skills, and you could talk about how that can transfer to the next position. Never ever talk negatively about your prior work, no matter what you truly think about it. That's certainly a red flag for employers. Just leave that part out of it. Sometimes you might be asked, why do you want this position, and why did you choose this for a career? Always show you have good character when answering this question. So don't say that you sort of fell into it. Always make it sound very positive and like something that has always been a goal for you. Demonstrate how you're a good fit for the position in terms of maybe your transferable skills and your related experience. What you should never do in an interview is ask about things that are probably, honestly, the things that are most important to you, like time off, benefits, and salary. Of course, you really do want to know those things, but those shouldn't be brought up because that's not showing how you are going to help the person who you're interviewing with in terms of their position. You want to show that you're a good fit for the company. They're hiring you because they probably have a need for someone to do the tasks, and that's probably not being filled at this point. They want to hear how you're going to make things work better for the company, not how the company is going to make things work better for you necessarily. Even though those things might happen, don't ask about them. Tell us about a time in which you worked in a team and how did you handle conflict? So these are situational questions, and you should expect that a lot of these are going to come up, or behavioral question. Expect many of them. So prepare for these by reflecting on your past experiences. Earlier I said it might be a good idea to journal and think about experiences you had in teamwork situations, in clubs, in organizations, in classes, in leadership situations. Journal on some of those so you're ready to bring out an example when someone asks you to give an example. If you really can't think of an example for a behavioral question, you might want to bring up a hypothetical. Well, I can't quite think of a time where that ever has happened to me, but if this happened to me, this is how I would react to it. So that would be the last resort if you can't think of an example. And it's okay and expected to take time to think this question through. They're okay with you sitting back and thinking about it for a minute. Pauses are expected in interviews. It's not like a communication situation where you're talking to a friend. Interviews are a little more formal and pauses are expected. Try not to use fillers like "that's a good question" if you're nervous or if you tend to pause to think about it. It's perfectly okay for you to sit there and think for a minute. They expect that from you. Answer the question thoroughly and honestly, and definitely keep it positive. Why did you leave your previous job? This is definitely a tricky question because it could have been something very negative. That was the last reason that you left a job. You might have quit in a bad situation. You could have been fired. Or hopefully you're just leaving because you're trying to expand your career possibilities. This is the answer that should be very short, especially if there's a negative reason why you left your previous job. If there were layoffs, you can mention it, only if it's company-wide layoffs. Hopefully you haven't been laid off specifically, but if it was company-wide, then downsizing is something that employers tend to understand in this economy. So you can say that. However, if you quit or left your job on any bad terms, just say it was not a good fit for me, or I was seeking a position that would be closer to my aspirations. Again, never ever say anything negative. They will probably ask if you're willing to work evenings and overtime or willing to relocate. So here you just need to be honest with them. You might ask for them to elaborate on that if you're unsure, if that wasn't part of the job description. If you say yes, they'll be pleased because if they're asking that, there probably might be a situation in which you're asked to do one of those things. If you say no, you are unlikely to get the job, but if you say no, is that a job that you really wanted anyway? If you're really not willing to relocate, then that's probably not the best job for you anyway. So just be honest here. They might ask where you see yourself in 5 years. This is tough because especially if you don't see yourself with the company in 5 years, how do you say that? If it's sort of a stepping stone and you had a wish to be with another company. So if it's true, the best answer is that you see yourself growing as a professional for the company that you are interviewing for. But if you see yourself somewhere else, try to be open-minded and say you're looking forward to learning what options are available for you to grow professionally. So try to be truly open-minded about it and try not to allude to looking elsewhere. You can, though, mention wanting to go to grad school outside of work hours. Companies tend to enjoy people who want to continue their education. At the end of every interview, they'll probably say to you, "Do you have any questions for us?" The worst thing you can do is say you have no questions, even if you don't. You should always have questions. Saying no may indicate to them that you're not interested in learning more, and it's a red flag. Whether it's true or not, or you think that you have heard everything that you needed to hear, saying no sends a different message to them than what you may intend it to send. But never ask about benefits, time off, salary, or anything that could possibly be construed as selfish on your part. Even though, of course, we all really want to know those things. So make sure you ask questions that show you want to be a valuable part of the team. I gave some examples earlier, but just to reiterate, you might ask what a day is like in that position or where the position might be heading in a few years. If there's opportunity for growth, for example, you can ask what the next step is in the interview process. And you can certainly ask what they like the most about working for that company. Okay, so now we're going to do a quick role play to show you a potential good answer to a couple of these questions.
Okay, tell us about yourself.
I'd be happy to. I'll be graduating in May with a bachelor's degree in management and a professional sales minor from William Patterson University. I feel the combination of my coursework in management coupled with the skills I have learned from my sales minor will help me to lead and work with others, as well as provide excellent customer service. I've worked to broaden my leadership skills beyond the classroom by being the SGA treasurer and coordinating philanthropic events on campus through my sorority. Finally, I was an intern at Enterprise last summer, and my supervisor recognized me for excellence in customer service, reliability, and ability to work with others.
And what makes you interested in our management trainee program?
I was originally drawn to Enterprise last summer when I attended a session your company held on campus discussing the company. That presentation was so impressive to me in terms of professionalism and the way enterprise really does care about the customer. So I interviewed for it and was selected for the internship program. Now that I've done the internship and experienced the professionalism and customer service focus firsthand, I can see why Enterprise was voted one of the top 100 companies to work for, and I'd be honored to join the team. I see you are looking for a team player, and that's one of my strongest traits.
Quick question.
Yes.
Somebody wants to know is I'd be happy to, like a filler, like, oh, let me think, or oh, good question.
That's a good point. That's definitely a good point. It could be construed as that. I don't think it's a make or break, but thank you for pointing that out, and I think it could
Just a
possibly
question.
construed that way. Is there anything else
No, that's it
right now? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question. It could be, but I don't think it's quite a make or break.
Especially if you go right into
Because you're going right into it.
Yeah.
So it's not like that's a good question, then you pause to think.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's going right into it. So I'm not sure that's really quite a filler. Okay. So while I spent a good portion of this webinar talking about different questions and answers, I want to emphasize again that nonverbal communication is really the ultimate deciding factor. So you can be very concerned about all the wording of all your answers to all the questions, and you could obsess about that. And I hope you don't, because I hope you understand that nonverbal communication is truly the ultimate deciding factor. In fact, up to 93% of an employer's decision to hire you takes place in the first 30 seconds before you even talk. So your presence upon coming into the interview says it all. Make sure that you have a firm handshake and that you look the interviewer in the hand and let them guide the bump, meaning the little bump in the handshake, because that kind of shows that they're in a position of power. Make sure your appearance is very welcoming and that you're well put together. Make sure your body language is open and not closed, and that it's confident, but of course not overly confident, like you've already gotten the position. So make sure you have a good posture. Make sure you're providing good eye contact, neither staring them down or looking down. So try to provide eye contact that is sort of reminiscent to the kind of eye contact you might have in a conversation with a friend. Be aware of paralanguage, and paralanguage isn't considered verbal communication. It is part of nonverbal. Your volume, make sure you're not shouting. Also, make sure you're not too quiet. Your pitch, your tone, and your hesitations. It's okay if you do some uhs and ahs, but if you're the type of person who says like all the time, there might be a perception that you're not perhaps as mature as a more professional candidate. There's a question.
A few questions.
Yes,
okay.
Okay.
First of all, the handshake. What if they don't like guide the bump? Someone said, like with the handshake. What if?
Just let them guide whatever it may be. Typically, a handshake does have a bump. I've never really experienced one without one, but just let them guide.
Okay. And
Good question.
Yeah. So you don't go and
Yeah, you don't go and do that
lead.
because that almost shows that you're leading them and they're not leading you. So whatever it is, make sure they're leading you.
Okay. And another question is it okay to ask an interviewer to repeat a question if you don't understand them? Maybe they have an accent or something like that.
Absolutely.
And how would you
so
do
you
that?
can say, I want to make sure that I give you the information that you're seeking. Would you please repeat the question so I make sure that I have it right when I answer it?
Okay.
That's totally fine.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to gestures, make sure that you do have some gestures to emphasize points, as you would. Hopefully, a lot of you have done public speaking, perhaps in some of your undergraduate classes. Some of the classes I teach, for example, involve public speaking. So make sure that you have appropriate gestures, that you don't over gesture or under gesture. Some people have a lot of nervous habits when it comes to their hands. And if you feel like you're flipping your hair too much and things like that, between answers, you can kind of tuck your hands underneath your legs to make sure that you aren't tempted to do something like flip your hair, do something like wringing your hands, something like that. Body odor, that's part of nonverbal communication. Some people are really turned off by too much perfume or cologne, so make sure you keep it sort of at a minimum. And I did talk about distracting nervous habits. That's where you might want to look at yourself in the mirror to make sure that you're de-emphasizing any nonverbal nervous habits that might be distracting to them. For example, I'll tell you that my nervous habit is I tend to blink too much, which good thing we're in a webinar, because if I'm blinking a lot because I'm nervous, you won't be able to see that right now. So that'd be great in a phone interview, but in an in-person interview, make sure that you practice an interview either with a career counselor or yourself in a mirror or with a friend or your spouse, and make sure that they can give you honest feedback about what your nervous habits are and that you can work on minimizing them. Cell phone noises. A big red flag is to have your cell phone on in an interview. Make sure it is off and it does not ring. Also, a glass of water might be okay if they offer it to you, but try not to come in lugging a bunch of stuff like coffee and slamming it on the desk and things like that. People tend to be very territorial about their desks, so make sure you're not putting your purse, your coffee, things like that, right on someone's desk. Make sure that you're are aware that that's kind of their territory, and you should ask permission before setting anything down on it.
What about question? What about how you sit? Like, should you cross your legs or sit straight up? Or
It's okay if you cross your legs like you would when you're talking to a friend, but make sure you sit up and have good posture because that's going to make your voice sound better and it's going to make you appear more confident. But between crossing or having your legs uncrossed or crossed, that really is okay either way because the legs are going to be hidden typically. Okay, so let me see if we have a chance to. Yes, we have time to watch this little video about dressing for success. Hopefully this will work, everybody. It does appear to work, so.
You've heard it for years. The better you dress at work, the better you'll be perceived, and the quicker you'll advance. To learn more about the importance of dressing well at the office, we spoke to a veteran human resources consultant.
Good, bad, right, or wrong, I've seen numerous instances where people got promoted that tended to dress better. People don't realize how important dressing is. I think we tend to think, oh, it's dumb, it's really not that important, who cares? Well, it's kind of like a resume. With clothing, it's the very first impression someone will get of you before you even have a chance to open your mouth.
For an insider's take on the right outfits for your profession, we spoke to a fashion representative at Theory's flagship store in New York City.
For men dressing in the corporate setting, I think a suit is always the best option. Here we have a dark navy suit. Dark suit's great just because it's really versatile and you'll always be able to wear it, whether it's for an interview, a board meeting, or any work appropriate occasion. For a man to dress in a less corporate setting, I think separates are a great way to go. For example, here we have a navy cardigan with a button down and a tie, and you can really wear it without the tie if you want to for a less corporate look. Wearing the khaki pant with any sort of button down is a great option for casual dressing at the office. It's put together, but it's still relaxed. If you're questioning something that you want to wear and you're not sure if it's right, it probably isn't. If it's too shiny, if it's too tight, if it's too big, I probably just wouldn't recommend wearing it. For women dressing in a corporate setting, I would recommend a suit. Here we have a great fitted blazer, a button-down shirt, and a trouser pant. It's really put together, it's easy, and it looks really professional at the same time. But another option, if you don't want to wear a suit, is separates. Something like a great cardigan like this, with a button-down shirt and a pencil skirt, is still professional, but a little bit more relaxed and great for the office. Another casual option at the office is a pair of khaki pants. We have these straight leg pants that are great with a little tie-neck top like this for a little novelty and a little fashion, but still work appropriate. Two other great casual options are shift dresses. What's great about shift dresses is that you can wear them underneath the blazer to work for an interview, or you can wear them just as they are. This one is great with a white button down underneath it, or this one's great too just alone. Some fashion faux pas for women to look out for in the workplace are really anything that's too much of anything, whether it's too short, too tight, too revealing, too low cut. You should really stay away from wearing anything like that.
I definitely think one should be thinking about wearing your best for an interview. I go by the rule, you're better off to tend to be a little bit more conservative in an interview than to go the other way around, unless you know specifically that they're looking at you for your creativity. Say you were going to interview in an advertising agency that's hiring you to be a creative person. There, you may decide to be a little bit more outlandish because that's what they're hiring you to do. The important part here is to be appropriate in the setting you're in.
Okay, so I couldn't have said it. Oops, I'm going to turn on my speaker. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that summed it up pretty well. Just make sure that you follow the interview suit suggestion for the actual interview. And part of that video showed what you could wear on the job, but make sure that for the interview that you are wearing a suit with a contrasting colored shirt underneath. There's a couple questions.
We have a couple questions.
Okay.
Okay. Somebody wrote in and said, she's been shopping for a suit and it's not made for her body. Like it emphasizes everything that's wrong for her body. And she mentioned that the dress is like the woman in the video. I think she means the woman who's speaking with the beautiful blue, like shift kind of dress.
The shift dress
looks best
black,
on her. And how do you do that in the winter?
Actually, that's okay. And I would just put a jacket and keep the on over it and keep the jacket open over the
Okay.
dress. That would be okay.
And you
That's
could go with
appropriate
like
as long as
that
you're wearing
blue color and
the blue. A dark color is
Okay.
appropriate for an interview. It could be black, could be gray, it could be dark blue. I would stay away from any of the lighter colors. And the shift dress, that would be okay if that's better for your body. And put the jacket over it. The jacket could be open if it needs to be, but just make sure you're wearing a little bit of a heel and definitely a closed toe shoe.
Okay.
Was there another question?
I have a question.
Yes.
I have tattoos, and I would cover them up for an interview. But do you let them know, or because they could be visible depending on what you're wearing? Do you let them know that you have them, or not let them know so that, what if your boss comes down one day and is like, oh my gosh, did you have a tattoo?
I would not let them know that I would have the tattoo. Definitely not. Just stay away from it. There's some things that you just, less is more to talk about. I would not bring it up in the interview, but definitely for the interview, keep that covered up. Okay? All right, so we're going to move on. Let's talk about interview aftermath. So another very important point that I want you to walk away with, besides researching the company, which I'm going to bring up for the third time, is to absolutely 100% send a thank you email or card within 24 hours of the interview. Preferably an email because it gets there much quicker. Make sure that you send one to everyone you encountered. I would even go as far as to, if you had a lengthy discussion with the receptionist while you were waiting, I might thank them for the conversation that you had. A thank you email, we do have examples of them on the Career Development Advisement Center website that you can find off the main page. But you would say something like, thank you for taking the time to interview me for the position today. Through this interview, I learned something about the company. Bring up something from the interview that you might have learned. I hope to hear from you again soon, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you, and have a great weekend. If say it was a Friday, you might say have a great weekend, and then you would put your name at the bottom, obviously. Also, after the interview, you might want to reflect in a journal to be prepared for any upcoming interviews, fingers crossed, because sometimes there could be multiple interviews, and you might not get to that second interview for another month past the first interview, and by that point, you might have forgotten some of the things you talked about or the people's names. So try to jot down a journal or even in the car before you leave some of the things that you remember from the interview. Do allow time to pass at least 2 weeks before inquiring about the status of the position. You have to understand that the people interviewing you have full-time jobs and they're very busy with those jobs, probably doing the job of the one that you're interviewing for temporarily. So you want to understand that it's the number one thing in your life going on right now, but it might not be the number one priority in their everyday in their job. So you might not hear back from them for 2 weeks or more. And that might just be because they got busy with other things or they have to go through some formal channels after the interview or something like that. But it is appropriate in your interview to ask about what the next step of the process is. And if they say something like, you'll hear back from me for sure within a week, and then 2 weeks have passed, then it's okay to follow up perhaps with an email to say you're still very interested and you're wondering when you'll hear back. That would be perfectly acceptable. Now, this will be the only downer statement in this webinar. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Keep applying to jobs until you receive and accept an offer. I've hardly met anyone who hasn't been through a situation where they've been through interviews and things seem to have gone wonderfully and it seems like they're going to get the job and then they hear nothing. Sometimes you might not even get a rejection letter or a call or anything. Sometimes all of a sudden it just disappears. This is very hard to take as someone who's interviewing for the job, and you might feel like you want to take that personally. Try to just pick yourself up and move on and understand that this is the type of situation that has happened to a lot of people. Honestly, it's even happened to me. So you want to make sure that you pick yourself up and just keep moving on until you're actually sitting in the job. Try not to take that personally. There could be a lot of dynamics in the company that you applied to that you don't know about, and that might be why that happened. We have a question.
We have another question. This is the last one about clothing, I think.
Okay.
You're wearing a skirt or a dress. Do you have to wear, hosiery like stockings?
That's a good question, and I have noticed that this is definitely this seems to be a generational question, because sort of it depends on who you think you might be interviewing with, because some generations still firmly believe that you need to wear hosiery with pumps and with a skirt. I do understand that those people who probably have graduated in the last 10 years or so tend not to wear hosiery. I guess it would be okay, especially if you wear a pantsuit, to not wear like knee highs or something like that. I think that if you wear hosiery, you can never go wrong. If you don't wear hosiery, I don't think it's going to be the make or break of you. Obviously, make sure you've shaved your legs, ladies. I had to say that, sorry. But make sure that, and make sure that, you know, if it's very obvious that you're not wearing hosiery, then I think I would wear it. But I don't think it's going to be the thing that makes or breaks you. And I do understand that question. I know hosiery is kind of an out thing. I understand that. I've learned that.
And
recently.
also, especially in the summer.
Especially in the summer, for sure. Okay. Here's something that I also want to make sure that you guys walk away with this. Your online presence is public. So you can be almost guaranteed that your Facebook account, your Twitter account, your LinkedIn account will be looked at by any employer that you're looking to work under. So especially if you go in an interview, make sure that Facebook page reflects you in a very positive way. Your Twitter account, your LinkedIn account, make sure that you are reflected very positively on that. And here's some data from a study done by someone named Reppler in 2011. So this was 2 years ago, and I can guarantee these statistics are probably higher today in 2013. 91% of employers use social media to screen potential job candidates. 76% will view your Facebook account, and that's despite privacy settings. If you have 1,000 friends on Facebook, you better believe that they probably have a friend who has a friend who knows a friend who works for the company that you're interviewing for, and there are ways to find you even if you think you're private. 53% will view your Twitter account because posts are archived. 48%, or probably more today, will view your LinkedIn account, but this should be used for job search because that's professional networking. 69% of employers, 2 years ago, 69% of employers have rejected candidates based on what is viewed. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have a life. If you have a Facebook account and it shows that you're a social person or a parent or just got married or something like that, that's totally acceptable. But if you're posting profile pictures of yourself being, let's say, irresponsible on the weekends, having to do with drinking or anything worse than that, you don't want that as your Facebook profile picture. You also don't want to have status updates that contain information that someone could be offended by in any sort of way. So use your best judgment when you're looking for a job. Question there. I knew there would be questions here.
Well, actually, no, it's going back a couple of slides.
Oh, okay.
But this one person says when they apply for a job and they were asked why they left, this person actually quit because she was being treated poorly. If she says she left because it wasn't a good fit, which was her answer, what if she's asked to elaborate? She has been asked to elaborate. Okay. What does she do? How does she elaborate on that?
Okay. That's a really
like
tough
she said,
one.
it's not a good fit.
And then they said, can you please elaborate on that? You could say that you had a situation where you were doing the best in the job that you were in, and I'm trying to think of the answer. That's a really good question.
But you don't ever want to badmouth.
You don't want to badmouth. So that's the thing. You can say that you could try this out and say that the corporate culture wasn't one that you could say something like the corporate culture wasn't one that you felt like you fit into as well as the corporate culture as the job you're applying to.
Right,
now.
and the one you're applying
for. And if
for.
they ask you to elaborate even more on that,
then you
probably,
say positive about the company you're applying for.
Yes, so try to keep throwing it back at them. That's a tough one, though. Yeah. That's a very good question. So even you might have stumped me a little bit on that one.
And someone also asked about Facebook. If your account is private, how can they view it? But I think you said if people are tagging.
Well, there's a lot of ways to view Facebook accounts. I know of 2 instances in the past couple of years where a teacher has been fired because of a status update that was very questionable to talk about different students and things like that. Their Facebook accounts were private. However, they might have been friends with the parent at the school. They might have been friends with other parents at the school or teachers or something like that. So there's a lot of ways to find things out. So you may think it's private, but then some of your friends may know people who may know other people.
And actually, someone here gave a good answer to that question about what do you say.
Okay, good.
You could say that you and your company had different goals. Like you had a different goal.
Not bad,
or maybe they envisioned you in a different role and that you think you could fit at this new company.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Jolie Simpson.
Who was that?
Thank you, Jolie.
Thank you, Jolie. That's a good one. Okay. I don't know if you heard the drum roll. There was a drum roll there. So I'm going to end this with the top 10 interview do's and don'ts. Do, number 10, dress the part. Do give examples. Do be professional with everyone you speak from the moment you walk in. Do ask well thought out questions at the end of the interview. Do keep your answers brief but thorough. Do address all interviewers by Mr., Ms., Doctor, unless requested to do otherwise. Do attempt to be the best natural version of yourself, which is very hard to do in an interview, I understand, but that's where practicing might help with that. Just try not to appear that you're over-rehearsed. Do send a thank you within 24 hours to everyone you met. Email is acceptable. Do show enthusiasm. That's part of your nonverbal communication. And I'll say it for the 5th time, research, research, research. Here are the don'ts. Do not arrive late. That's almost a guarantee that you're not going to get the position, even if it was something that you could have perceived that was out of your control. Don't bring drinks or food into the interview. Don't look at your watch. That tends to indicate you're bored. Don't do that on dates either. Give you some dating information. Don't speak to the interviewer as you would a friend. There's always someone interviewing you, no matter how casual they might come off. Don't say anything negative about yourself or anyone else. Be the most confident version of yourself. Don't appear either desperate or overconfident. Do you find a balance? Don't answer questions with just yes or no. Be sure you elaborate, and examples are the best thing you could do. A lot of people are fearing that they're being viewed as bragging. You've learned your whole life not to boast about your accomplishments. The interview is the one free pass on that. You are allowed to talk about your positive accomplishments in an interview without being perceived as bragging. Do not discuss time off, salary, or benefits. And the last don't is never lie. Again, thank you, alumni. I'm Deborah Sheffield. We've had great questions. Are there any more?
I'm going to ask just a few here.
Okay.
If you have, because I know we have to end very soon.
That's fine.
If you have to send a thank you email, if you had a phone interview and it was like a preliminary call with very little information exchange, it was like a preliminary phone interview, do you still send a thank you?
I'd have to hear more